And it's just a totally different lifestyle. I sometimes think all of us, suffer from a little bit PTSD with stuff that happened in South Africa. And I just think we are so immensely blessed to be in Australia.
I'm Dr. CHAMONIX Blanche, ex-corporate and academical, turned CEO and board member of several companies and mother of 4 little extraordinary kids. But it wasn't that long ago that I lacked the confidence, the know-how, and the time to focus on designing and really going after the life that I so wanted to live. A life of freedom, of fairness, and of being fair dinkum to who I really was and what I wanted to get out of this fleeting time that we have on Mother Earth. Fast forward to many lessons learned and moving halfway around the world to the most amazing country, you'll see the life that I now live. One that gives me more safety and freedom than I ever thought would be possible, and that really only existed as a daydream while I was living in South Africa. I created CHAMONIX TV to give you true spot advice on how you can also live a life in this amazing country, and so that you can see how another couple like us now live in Australia with 4 little kids here in Down Under. And I'll be providing you with step-by-step strategies so that you can make your Aussie dream a reality too. If you're a keen future Aussie who's looking to create a life that excites you and offers you safety, freedom, and opportunity, you have come to the right place, my friend. Welcome aboard.
The solo drive to migrating to Australia can be pretty lonely, especially when you hit a bumpy part in the road. Joining our one-of-its-kind course where migration specialists teach you all things needed to be able to get visa ready, get a job, and make your way to Australia as soon as possible, as well as having a supportive community, can be the make or break of reaching your destination here in Australia. Now, Migration Made Easy is opening its doors again very soon. If you're ready to find your dream life and land that first Aussie job sooner, Migration Made Easy is the place to be. Join the waitlist and you'll receive some juicy bonuses when the doors open. Secure your place at chamonixtv.com.au/waitlist. Hi, Lizette. Thank you so much for joining us today, all the way from Adelaide. How are you?
Hi, well, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm very well, thanks. It's just after 5 in a beautiful, I think, 32 degrees. So it's a bit of a hot one today.
Oh, 32 degrees. That's beautiful. Yes, that's perfect, like beach weather. Do you guys go to the beach often or not?
Every now and again. Our closest beach is about 20 minutes drive, and we like to take the doggo for a walk on the beach. But I would say Adelaide is a switch too cold to swim. So I would compare it to probably Cape Town. There are brave souls that do swim. Mind you, most of them have wetsuits on. But yeah, we don't really swim too much on the south coast.
Yes, I can understand that. If you put your toe in and it feels like it's going to fall off, then you're rather
Exactly.
It's not warm enough outside then.
Exactly. We'll just enjoy the beach and the fish and chips and the birds and everything else. But no, too cold to swim.
And it's beautiful there in Adelaide. Your beaches are incredibly beautiful. Now, I heard you talk about a doggo. And to me, that tells me that you're very Australian already. Tell us, how long have you been in Australia for?
We arrived, I think, in October 2008. My husband's in the Air Force, so to us, home is wherever the Air Force posts us. So we started off in the lower Blue Mountains for 4 years, and then Canberra for 7 years, and now in Adelaide. Well, we've been here 2 years, so who knows? I don't know when the next posting is coming. We'll have to see.
Oh, that's very interesting, because I can think of a few places you haven't been on the West Coast, up the North. But it's
on
nice.
The bucket list.
Yeah. There are so many. People often ask me, where should they go to in Australia? Like, where's the best place to go and live? And I'm like, mate, everywhere in Australia is amazing. Exactly. If you prefer more humid weather, of course, then go to the tropics. If you prefer a drier climate, Perth or Adelaide is your place. But everywhere is incredibly, incredibly beautiful.
Exactly. And we kind of, we kind of treat ourselves like tourists. Every time we move for a new posting, we see everything in that vicinity, or I would say 3 hours in every direction, what we can, and just keep the rest of Australia for whatever the next posting might bring. But Australia is so huge. I don't think people have any idea just exactly how big.
I didn't realize until I came to Australia the first time.
Yeah,
you
so
fly
much to see and do.
5.5 hours from the one side of Australia to get to the other side. It's like,
yep.
In South Africa, you flew from Joburg to Cape Town in 1 hour, and I thought that's far.
No.
Okay, so the Air Force. Now, how did that first move to Australia happen?
There's probably a backstory before the story. And well, we actually started looking at New Zealand first because I had two cousins that are dairy farmers in Matamata. And we thought, if we're going to move overseas, it might be easier if we do that. And things just didn't happen. My hubby's name is Anton. So we did look at New Zealand. Things didn't work out, couldn't find a job for him because Anton was, his career was so job specific that we just couldn't manage. So we kind of put it aside and it didn't happen. And probably a year down the line, then we decided, when everything became too much and there was lots of stuff happening, with losing friends and family and stuff, just stuff happening in South Africa. Then finally Anton said, okay, fine, send out my CV. And I thought that was the green light that I needed, because I wanted to immigrate 5 years before he even gave the green light. So I sent Anton's CV to every aviation company in Australia. Didn't really pan out. There was one company that was interested, and he made the shortlist, but at the end it was between Anton and the other guy, and they decided to go with a local. But in the meantime, we also applied for him in the Air Force. But the first time we tried looking for the Air Force, it was closed to anybody but Australians, New Zealanders, and Brits. So we thought, okay, that's the end of the road. And then we heard of somebody that actually got an offer from the Air Force. So we thought, no, this can't be right. We checked it out and it's not right. So we did check it out. And thank God they had shortages in certain areas. So Australian Air Force actually decided to open up to whomever country, if they can get people with the right skills, they can actually get them here. So Anton was a mechanical engineer in South Africa, but when they converted his skills with Engineering Australia, they said, oh no, mate, you need one more subject to be a mechanical engineer. We'll just call you a mechanical engineering technologist. So whatever. So when we looked
but
at
that means
jobs,
he qualified for the
skills.
For the skills, for the visa?
Yes, because they had a logistics officer as on the skills list, on the shortage list, not mechanical engineers. So he thought, it's slightly boring, but he's done it for quite a few years in South Africa. And if that's the foot in the door that we need, then that's what we're going to take. So he applied for this position. Didn't think much of it because it took like 5 months. So long story short, the other company where he didn't get in, then eventually phoned him back and said, listen, the other guy didn't last. He lasted a month. Are you still interested? Anton said, yes, I am. And that same week, he actually got a job offer from the Australian Air Force. And that was exactly to the cent, double the salary. So we just thought, look, let's quickly sign this contract before they change their minds.
Wow.
And he managed to get in like that. So we were actually the second last lateral recruits to get in. So I don't know if they're going to open it up again, if they have certain shortages, but certainly way back then in 2008, we were the second last recruits to get in. And that was the softest landing compared to other stories that we've heard, because the Air Force, they expedited our visas, where normally we were probably looking at that stage at about 10 months from application to granted, and ours were done in about 6 months. And on top of that, they bought us business class tickets to get us here, and they gave us a car rental for the first 2 weeks, and a house in some resort. So it felt like we were on holiday for the first almost 2 months until we could find a house. So my son actually started school while we were still living in the resort, because we then finally managed to get a rental, and at least we had the contract to say, look, this is where we're going to live. We can't move in yet, but this is what we've got. So, but long story short, yeah, we absolutely were incredibly blessed with how we came over, but it certainly would have been a much different story if we didn't get in via the Air Force. I said to Anton, look, if I have to clean houses or go and be a checkout chick at Woolies or whatever, I'll happily do that, because here in Australia there's no such thing as cheap labor. Some teachers that's been teaching for 5 years and cleaners, they basically make the same money. So I wasn't really hung up on the status. I just felt that I wanted to get out of South Africa, and things just really worked out so well for us.
That is amazing.
It does have its challenges as well, but for the most part, we really enjoy being in the Air Force. They really do look after their people very well.
Well, he's still with the Air Force, isn't he?
He is. He was in the South African Air Force he just missed his 20-year medal with 3 months. So he was 19 years and something months in South Africa, and then he's been in the Australian Air Force for 13 and a half years now. And they are taking his service over there into consideration. So his superannuation and everything, it looks like he still had a massive service, because they take both forces into
no
consideration.
waiting time, I understand. How incredible is that?
After talking about waiting times, well, part of his work was to get a security clearance. And without a security clearance, he can't do his job. So 3 months after we arrived here, our container hasn't even arrived yet. But then they made him a citizen, and the kids too, because the kids are his dependents. And I'm like, what am I? I had to wait 4 years. Coming over with permanent residence, I had to wait 4 years before I could apply for citizenship. But Anton and the kids were made citizens immediately, which of course is jolly nice.
Immediately. That's the first time I hear of that. That's incredible. I didn't know that it's possible for them to expedite it. But obviously, I think it's because of the job that he's doing, because you've got to be a citizen to be able to work for the Air Force or something.
Yes, so you normally have to be a citizen before you can apply for security clearance. But if you say, for instance, if you have permanent residency, you can apply for defence jobs or for defence contracting jobs. And it just means that, you are eligible then to get that security clearance. But some people run into a bit of issues if they have some bridging visa or a temporary visa or whatever, because then you can't work for any type of job that you need a security clearance for, because you need to go through all the hoops first.
So you said you landed in Canberra first, was that right?
No, in the Blue Mountains. Blue Mountains is just gorgeous. That's 66 km west of Sydney. So Blue Mountains is, that area, I think the national park is something like 200,000 hectares of just mountains and eucalyptus trees. If it's a hot day and the sun bakes on the leaves, you literally smell eucalyptus. It smells like one of these candle places that you go into. And it's actually got a blue mist. It looks misty. It's like a blue mist, and that's why they call it the Blue Mountains.
Blue Mountains. Did you see koalas there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, quite a lot.
In the wild?
Yes. And lots of kangaroos as well. And that particular area is just amazingly abundant of bird life. So I remember when I go out of my suburb and I get to the first traffic lights, there would just be like 40 galahs there sitting, squawking. You can't hear a damn thing on the phone because there are just birds everywhere. And same with the kookaburras that made a nest in my backyard. It was a bit frightening. My very first encounter with a blue-tongue lizard. I thought it was a blue-tongue lizard. It turns out to be a monitor. That thing was like the size of a crocodile, because our house was split level, and I got out from the rumpus room, walking up the steps to the lawn to go and hang the washing, and this thing is just staring at me, and I yelled like a banshee and just ran into the house, took a photo, sent it to my friends and say, what is this? But yeah, the wildlife is quite abundant in the Blue Mountains. But it's just absolutely so stunning. And I loved living there because on a Sunday we would make use of it was like a family special where you pay $2. So on a Sunday, the moment church ends, we just hit the road, jump onto the train, and you can catch any ferry, bus, train, any mode of transport for just that $2. You use the same ticket. So Sundays used to be the day that we used to go and walk around in the rocks and go and see museums and catch a ferry and go and eat fish and chips at the famous shop. God, the name escapes me now, but it's just a really easy life and so safe and just very family orientated.
So how long were you guys in the Blue Mountains for then?
For 4 years. So the kids were 3 and 5 when we came. Lene was at home with me for the first year, and Aiden, like I said, Aiden immediately started school. We were quite anxious for him to start school immediately because he was then kindergarten. And poor thing, he had such a difficult year because we only started speaking English to the kids 6 months before we came out to Australia. They were as Afrikaans as anything. And also in South Africa, in kindergarten, at least back then, it was just a social year. You learn how to write your name, count to 10, and that's it. It's just social stuff and learn to play. And when he started here in kindergarten, all his mates in the class could read little booklets and they could read and write. And Aiden's like, what's my last name again? So that was really difficult for him. So I obviously had to sit a little bit with him, but they had teacher aides in the class to help the kids that were struggling a little bit. And so at least he got the support that he needed. And
did he go to a public school?
Started out in a public school, yes. Yeah. So in the Blue Mountains, it was mainly public school. Later, we decided to move them to a private school just because he's ADHD and borderline Asperger's, and we just felt we needed that extra little bit of help for him. And that school actually specialized in ADHD, and one of his teachers was actually ADHD himself. So he would grab, and he would have an only boys club, and he actually would say to the boys, let's go to the long jump pit. We're going to do maths. Make sure you grab a nice long stick. And they would just do their maths in the sand pit.
How cool.
That was amazing. Yeah. So, or if they need to, especially the ADHD kids need to do a bit of heavy muscle exercises. So they would have, give them tasks to do or different exercises where they pull against each other's weights, or there was a boxing like thing that were hanging up, and they have the opportunity to take turns to box for a minute. So I think that was quite unusual. We've never encountered that before, but certainly that private school knew what they were doing for kids like that.
So 4 years there, and then one day Anton got the news it's time to move on.
Yes, so postings normally happen around July, August. So we got his posting orders to say that we'd received a posting to Canberra. And of course I said to him, I don't really care where we're going. I'm just not really keen on Catherine and Canberra. And of course we got Canberra. But I'm actually really glad because Canberra was very nice. It was they actually the Air Force actually sent him to Canberra to study full time for a year to do his first masters. So the kids and I had to constantly get out of the house, just not to make a sound, to give Anton time to study and do his assignments and whatnot. So we had annual passes for the zoo and for Questacon. I don't know if you know what Questacon is. It's a science museum, but they change the exhibits every 3 months. And it's not a museum in the sense of a museum. It is made for kids.
Interactive, yes.
So they encourage to touch and play and pull and push and jump off stuff. Or if you get to the lab area, the guy says, what would you like me to do? And Aidan would say, make something explode. And the guy's like, right. And he would put stuff together or just do wonderful experience for the kids. So Canberra is awesome for kids, particularly. Mm-hmm. And I think with all the politicians there, they have the best schools and best roads and best everything for themselves. It's extremely multicultural because you have all the embassies there, and they once a year have open day for the embassies, and you can actually go in and see what the embassy look like, and they have cultural food and dancing, in their costumes and all of that. But Canberra is I would say a heavy rotation on people coming and going all the time, because the embassies as well have 3-year postings. So lots of government and embassy people moving around all the time. But we were basically there for 7 years. Yeah.
And that's a long. So how does that, just explain to a non-military person how it works? Does Anton have a choice when he moves, or does he apply to move, or is it like a step up in his career, then you move? Well, how does that process work?
Well, first of all, South Africa, we for 20 years, we stayed in the same location. You don't move unless you're chasing a promotion. But in Australia, you are being rotated depends on whether you're Air Force, Navy or Army. I think Navy and Army, their postings are about 2 years. For Air Force is 3 years. So they would post you out to an area, and then in your time there, they would probably keep you there they'd try to keep you there for 6 years, but you would have 2 different jobs there, can I say. And it's to kind of give you exposure to different areas and just, increase your knowledge of the Air Force and what they do and so on. It also comes with promotions. They normally promote from the top, and then they work it filter the way down, and they need to, you can put your 3 top choices down, but you don't necessarily get that. This time we were lucky. We actually did get Adelaide, but the first 2 times, what was it? Glenbrook and Richmond and Canberra wasn't even on our list. So at the end, they try and help you out where they can, but at the end of the day, they need to put you where they need you. It all depends on what rank you are and what type of job you're doing.
Okay. So you can try to stay in the same spot? No?
We will certainly, at the end of this year, we will try and ask them if we can stay for 1 more year, because Lene is doing year 12. That's equivalent to a matric, and Aidan is a second-year uni student. He's doing secondary teaching. So we would like for the kids to just be settled a little bit before we bugger off to another state, because the course that Lene wants to do is only at 3 universities in Australia. So if we do move, it might mean that we might be in a different state, or they do overseas postings. So we might be in America somewhere. So
that's interesting. Yeah.
So it all depends on where they need you and what you can do.
Did Anton have to give up his South African citizenship when he became an Aussie?
Well, as a South African resident, you never lose your residency. Yeah. But yes, he lost his citizenship, because before you apply for another country's citizenship, you first have to apply to South Africa to keep your citizenship.
If you want to,
he decided not to go that route because 2 years after we arrived in Australia, South Africa changed their laws. South Africa went through a period where they lost an immense amount of people to the Australian Defence Force. They were kind of poaching South African Defence Force members, and they wanted to put a stop to it. And one of the things that they did was to make it an act. They actually passed a bill that's been dormant for absolute years, something like 10 years or something. So they changed the laws to say that if you are serving in a foreign country's defence force, you are now seen as a mercenary. So Anton can go back to South Africa, but he might run the risk of being arrested. So needless to say, we won't be going back to South Africa while he's still serving.
Yeah. And so you haven't been back to South Africa?
He hasn't. He and the kids haven't been back. I've been back once. That was probably about 5 years ago. It was really nice to go, but quite frankly, I don't feel that I need to go again. We rather help the family to come and visit us. So like every 4 years we would get Anton's parents to come, or my mom and stepdad to come. But I just feel that it's not the same anymore, because the things that I held dear, like siblings and family, I just feel that my sister is in Canada, my younger brother is in Auckland, my twin brother is in Christchurch, and mum now lives in, where did they move to? Mossel Bay. So, I just feel I'm not going to go back to South Africa. I'd rather help mum to come over for a visit. There are things that I miss, but, I suppose I compare it to, how rich and amazing our life is here. And I just don't feel that there's anything to miss out.
That's a very good point, because you've made this your home. So why would you go back all the time? Have you guys been traveling the world though? Have you been overseas or seeing Australia, traveling much of Australia other than moving around in Australia?
We love traveling, but of course, it costs a lot of money to travel, but we've been to New Zealand a couple of times. My sister's then 16-year-old son played in the under 19 Canadian cricket team. There was the World Cup in Christchurch. So I think that was the second time we went. And then the third time to visit the brothers, because, then my brother was there as well. But we were lucky in a way as well, if you can call it that. Anton had a posting to Afghanistan. So the kids and I, we lived in Canberra, and then it was posting time, and we weren't sure what was going to happen. We were kind of expecting to be posted out, but instead Anton got the marching orders that he needs to go to Afghanistan for 6.5 months. So that was a bit of a nasty surprise, to put it mildly, because I just thought, we didn't come halfway around the world just for him, something to happen to him over there. But luckily he's a desk jockey, and he was fairly safe where he was. But halfway through that 6.5 months posting, the Defence Force either flies you back, they fly you to Rome and then anywhere in the world. So instead of him coming home, we said, you stay right where you are. We'll meet you in Rome or Naples or whatever. So we were extremely lucky to tour Italy in those 2 weeks, because you only had 2 weeks to see him. And that was an amazing trip, a bit of a whirlwind, but we've seen, so we've seen Italy as well. And I suppose that wouldn't have been possible if he wasn't with Defence. And then we moved to Adelaide, and 3 weeks after the last box was packed out, he arrived back. So great timing.
Amazing. Well, I'm just looking up the number of people, but I know that Scott Morrison has just announced another nearly 20,000 more personnel for the Defence Force in Australia, and I'm sure that you will be across these things since Anton is in the military. So, you know, you said back then, 2008, I think by memory, you said, was the last time they allowed that to happen. But who knows what's going to happen now? Because if they opened up 20,000 new jobs in Australia for the Defence Force, they are going to struggle to fill all those positions with Australians, as you will know, because we have a lot of shortages in Australia. So it might just be that there will become more options, maybe, hopefully, to some of our friends who live still in South Africa or any other country who can serve to the Australian Defence Force. So
I certainly hope so. That would be amazing. I know that I'm not sure what type of expertise they would be looking at. I think that announcement was mainly made because of the floods that's been happening in Queensland, and there aren't enough reserves to do all of that. But certainly,
I said it's in response to China.
Oh, well, look, that as well. But I would just say, you know what, do your homework. And, you know, like us, I thought our options were closed for defence, but they opened it again. And I would say the same thing for whoever wants to come, you know, do your homework. And if I just look at I'm EA to the CEO, but we're a very small company and we don't have an HR department. So I'm kind of the one that looks after recruiting. But if I can just tell you the amount of CVs that I look at that doesn't have a cover letter, or that you can see that they use the same CV for every single application that they put through. And I think South Africans need to know that most, especially the bigger companies, use software. And if they advertise a position and there are lots of buzzwords and you use those same buzzwords in your CV, it doesn't even pick up your CV. So I think it's important just for people to be tenacious, do your homework in the industry that you are, and tailor-make your CV and your cover letter as whatever is advertised to get yourself a foot in the door.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very good points of advice there. And just, you know, tell us a little bit about your children and how they see themselves at the moment. Do they see themselves as South African or Australian? Do you guys speak Afrikaans at home?
At the moment, we speak a lot of English with them, because I just get these weird blank stares, like you can see Bambi in the headlights. They do not have a clue what I'm talking about. So I kind of, you know, stuck to English with both of them. But in the beginning, Lene was super. I mean, she's a stubborn child. She is gorgeous, but oh my word, you know, she's testing your patience. And she just one day realized when she doesn't like fruit, when at school they have these fruit breaks. So, and you can't eat anything but fruit. So one day she just said, I want a Marmite sandwich. And I think that's the first time she spoke English at school. But it took a while for them both to, you know, get into English and all of that. And Aiden particularly decided that I think he went through a rebellion phase where all he wanted to do was fit in. So he refused to actually speak Afrikaans. And then he hit high school and he realized, oh, chicks really like accents and that you can speak another language. And then suddenly he spoke Afrikaans, but only when the friends or the mates are near. So that was actually a bit of a funny one. But both of them, I mean, I'm super grateful that Aiden got the little bit of extra help that he needed in school. I think for public school is totally fine for mainstream kids. If you've got a middle of the road kid, you know, you don't need anything other than that. But I think if you have somebody with special needs, you might or might not want to look into something like Montessori or a private school that specifically caters for whatever your child's needs may be. But both of them are doing well. And I think one of the things that I really one of the biggest thing that I really appreciate about Australia is that if you want to go and study, you can study. I mean, if you can get into university, well, I mean, the government give you an extremely low rate to study, and I'm just thinking, way back, Dad had to take out like a second bond, just for university studies, and it's so different. And I love that anybody that wants to go and study can study. It's not out of reach. With that government scheme, you only start paying back once you earn above a certain amount, and that to me is amazing.
Yep.
But it's also, they really encourage the trades as well, and in South Africa it was sometimes looked downward,
frowned upon. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So and here it's absolutely not the case. When it's your plumbers and electricians that they make a truckload, and they are the ones with the fancy 3-story houses and whatnot. But I think in short, it's basically just that, if you want to make a success, if you decide that you're going to make the best of it, and you're going to enjoy your time here, and you're going to work hard, and you're not too fussed about titles and stepping back sometimes a little bit in your career, you'll make a success. I know that a lot of people that was an issue for, but I think most of us had all kind of stepped back a little bit from where we were in South Africa compared to where you get in. But the thing is, if you give yourself 2-3 years just to get used to it, you're just going to take off, and you must just be willing to accept maybe a position that's slightly lower than what you anticipated as well.
Well, and only for a short time usually, because then after that,
exactly, tend
to just go up so much in terms of climbing the corporate ladder. Yeah.
I've had a couple of employers that said, look, we love employing South Africans because South Africans work like madmen. And, so I was very lucky in that regard, that he actually already worked with South Africans, and he worked actually in South Africa. So that was really nice that somebody could recognize that.
Yeah, that's incredible. I hear the same thing from people who hear, oh, okay, you're South African, like, oh, so, or if you suggest somebody who's South African to somebody else who has a vacancy, like, oh, I'm so glad to hear that they're South African, because we know the work ethic of South Africans are really good. And what was the other comment I had the other day? They said South Africans are really switched on, which I thought that was great. Good feedback to hear that.
Yeah.
So, Lizette, if you had to do it all over again, I guess that would be a resounding yes, because you almost came in on the red carpet.
Oh, look, to me, it's a no-brainer. I think it's very important that, if you're coming over with a spouse, that you're on the same page, and that your relationship is strong. Because you're going to have, I'm sure you'll have challenges, but if you're on team us, you can only make a success of it. But I would encourage anybody that's, if you're keen to come, there's nothing to think about. I think if people haven't lived in another country, then they don't know what life could be. I mean, I worked in London for a year, way back, even before I met my husband, and I've always said to him, that there are better places to live than South Africa. And he was like, oh, but it's not that bad to, have the dogs and the fence and the electric fencing and ADT and whatnot. And I'm like, no, buddy, you don't understand. That's total
point.
freedom.
That's why it's bad. Yes.
I can go out and walk with the dog at 10 o'clock at night, and I can be safe. My daughter can meet her friends a couple of blocks from home, and she'll be safe. And it's just a totally different lifestyle. I sometimes think all of us, suffer from a little bit PTSD with stuff that happened in South Africa, and I just think we are so immensely blessed to be in Australia. And I know in the beginning I felt a bit like a traitor for leaving South Africa, and I know a few people made nasty comments to us, but I just felt like, you know what, this is now our time to be selfish and to think of my direct own family, because I don't want my kids to grow up in all of that. So to me, I'm super excited, because I know that my kids and us have a bright future ahead of us, and I think anybody should at least, do your homework, make sure, have a look at careers, go online. Everything is online nowadays. You can find out what it would cost to rent a house, what groceries cost, and all that type of things. Just do your homework, look into it, and I'm sure that anybody would agree that especially Australia is a fantastic place. In many ways, it feels to me like we just moved suburbs instead of country sometimes, just because we are so much alike and we have so much in common with the Aussies.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you guys managed to come in and just absorb and become Australian. Well, okay, literally, you guys were offered Australian citizenship that quickly. But I mean, it's also still a choice. You can also decide how you want to adapt to your new country and whether you want to be enjoying it, because it's a choice. You can decide to be unhappy in a place, and you can decide. I'm just so thankful to the Australians that they have given you and me and many others of us here in Australia a second chance at life. It's been fabulous talking to you. It's been really great just hearing
and
how
you.
Thank you. How you've gripped Australia and just like, this is mine now, and I'm making it the best place. Oh, I love it. I love it.
Oh no, well, thank you for having me. It's certainly a massive relief, and we're just so happy to be in Australia. And you know what, we just tourists in whatever location we are. So for now, we're happy to see Australia on the Defence Forces dime. But we're excited for whatever comes next, whether it's an overseas posting or here. At least if it's an overseas posting, we know we'll be back in 3 years, because that's only 3 years. But we'll see. And
also, if you go overseas, you go with an Australian passport. So it's like,
exactly.
You're safe.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Could have been much worse. At least they've got me.
Yes.
Exactly.
Enjoy your afternoon, and we'd love
much.
to hear from you again if you move to another posting somewhere else in Australia.
Sounds good. I'll let you know. Thank you so much for your time.
It's my pleasure. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
All right. So thank you so much for joining me today. If you had fun, please remember to hit that subscribe button, and then it'll make sure that you never miss a thing. I'll see you same time and same place next week. Bye for now.